In the absence of the portfolio holder, who is Councillor Pomfret, I will just introduce this. So, the Antisocial Behaviour Strategy 2016-19, the Council are committed to making the borough a safer place to live, where people's day-to-day life is not blighted by crime or antisocial behaviour. To fulfil this ambition, the introduction of a strategic mechanism to identify and facilitate further development to address the key priorities linked to ASB has been developed. The ASB Strategy 2016-19 sets out our corporate approach to challenging antisocial behaviour and defines what is meant by it, establishing an action plan for the Council to work together to reduce ASB in partnership with other agencies and organisations of both a voluntary and statutory nature. The issue of ASB is a constant concern raised by members of the community. By adopting this strategy, the Council will be giving a firm commitment to local residents that we will take their issues seriously and seek to address the incidents they experience by working closely with our colleagues from the Nuneaton and Bedworth Safer Communities Partnership. On this item we've got Councillor Condotta.
Me.
Oh, sorry, Michelle Condotta. Sorry, I apologise.
Thank you, Chair. I only wanted to just sort of highlight a couple of things. Obviously, overall, the strategy is a good thing. I mean, I am concerned as to how it can all be implemented, particularly with the comments on page 19. Positive outcomes for the strategy will rely heavily upon the availability of resources, both people and financial, and on departments and partners being engaged. And of course, with Kurt's agenda, sort of resources are getting a bit thin on the ground, so it's going to be quite hard for some of this to actually go into thing. The one thing also I wanted to highlight was the ASB priorities number 2, to prevent and deter. It says work with partners to promote diversionary activities for younger people where available. And I'm just concerned to make sure that that is actually available across the whole of the borough, because so many of the activities and any grants that you can apply for doing projects and things are only very much for the deprived, what's considered the deprived wards in the borough. And it's really hard to get anything going in any of the other areas, and areas like St Nicholas, Weddington, Whitestone and things still do have antisocial behaviour. Maybe not as severe as other wards, but that it needs to make sure that it is actually available across the whole borough, because people do feel very good that oh well, that area will always get all the the money and things. So I think that's all I wanted to say there.
Thank you. Are there any questions to Mrs. Condotta? No? Thank you very much. Does any other member wish to speak on this? No? Are we all in agreement then with the report's recommendations?
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you very much. Item 7. Fees and charges in relation to hackney carriage and private hire vehicles, which is on page 27. Sorry if I keep moving bits of paper, but I've got 2 agendas. Well, basically this is to bring us into a legal situation, to bring us our fees and charges in line with the law. I will let you come in a minute, but I've got to let Councillor Condotta speak. So basically, it's to our report is actually to bring us in line with the law. Councillor Condotta.
Thank you very much, Chair. A Happy New Year, municipally wise. On this issue, I read the Nuneaton News, the Taxi Drivers Association making wild claims about it being a 278% rise and all this stuff. And obviously I can't see a 278% rise. But what I do see is a lack of communication between the people supporting the taxi drivers and their association and the council and other members in terms of where we're going, actually to try and improve the situation. I very much like cheaper taxis in England because they are some of the more expensive in the region, and we have the lowest income of any part of Warwickshire. I don't need to tell you how times are tough and yet the austerity, how little income a lot of people in the Neaton and Bedford have, which means they then don't have a car and just sometimes do rely on taxis. So I do hope we can actually be more constructive and try and work with the taxi drivers to try and take some of the costs out of their existence. We obviously have an issue, and it's unfortunate that Coventry's fees aren't mentioned here, with people actually coming who live in Coventry to work in the borough. And so there is obviously a displacement of employment. So it doesn't actually mention in the report what the charges are in Coventry. And I would love taxi fares to be cheaper. And having a large number of taxis means that actually each one gets far too little work to keep them turning over and viable. And some of them complain about being on the breadline. So yeah, it is something where I think a summit, a forum or something where we can actually go into this in more detail to actually try and make the whole system work better. I'm also aware, and obviously being on licensing committee as I was in the past, that there are some taxi drivers who are well below standards, and from anecdotal information we've got some wonderful taxi drivers. So one thing obviously the licensing thing needs to do is also bring up standards so we actually have a level playing field and people feel confident to use the service. I say taxis are wonderful because it does actually take away the need for people to own 2 cars per family or even 1 car per family if there's a good service. So I do hope the council engages and actually has some form of summit to actually try and iron out some of the issues the taxi drivers have with their costs and yeah, the number of people licensed.
Any questions to Councillor Kondalka? No, thank you very much. Councillor Lloyd, I'm just going to ask you a question before I can. Have you been on the licensing committee?
On my own licence?
Have you been on?
Once.
Right. I've just asked because I think many of us have been on the licensing committee on and off for years. We know all the problems about taxis, we know all the problems about taxi licences, we know that taxi drivers would like to pay as little as possible, and so would the people who use taxis. It's quite obvious. But the council has to steer a path that is fair to all, is fair to the people who use taxis, is as fair as possible to the people who run taxis, doesn't break the law, and is as equitable as it can be. And in comparison with other authorities in the way taxis are licensed, I'm not discussing fares at the minute because that's a different situation and is I think the subject of a single member decision later this month or maybe next month. And this report basically makes sure we are complying with the law. So, Mr. Jacobs, you want to add anything?
I mean, you know, the Cabinet recently approved the hackney carriages, and we do have to break even on all the fees and charges. If not, then money has to come from some other part of the council. It's as simple as that. It has to break even. Our fees, even now, are comparable to North Warwickshire, and Coventry's, I think, don't quote me on this, are very similar to ours, as in the fees and charges that they are charging. But I will check on that. But it does work down too that the cost per week comes out at about £2.70 for a driver, for a new licence for a driver. That's all.
What a great deal. Okay, well we have the recommendations in front of us. Are we agreed on that? Okay, thank you very much. We have a recommendation from Overview and Scrutiny Panel on item 8. I don't know if it falls under your portfolio. Shirley, did you want to say anything?
I can just brief the panel if you want me to, or I'm happy for you to consider the report as it.
What's the procedure?
Well, I understand that Shirley is going to say what Councillor John Bass was going to say, so too initially to just present.
Would you like to give it, yes, just a short introduction?
Makes it easy, doesn't it? Okay, sorry, the Chair, John Bass, couldn't be with you tonight, so I said I would stand in for him. The Economic and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Panel set up a select committee last year to review the use of pavilions, changing rooms and chapels in the borough, with a view to identifying those which could produce a financial or social income for the council through increased use of the facilities by local community groups. The Select Committee were advised early in that review that the ability to fully conduct the review was going to be impacted on by the playing pitch strategy not being available at the time that the review was taking place. So they had to put the changing room elements of the review sort of on the back burner, so to speak, and concentrate more fully on the chapel. And so this report in front of you concentrates more on the chapels, although there are a few comments about the pavilions in there. The OSP made several recommendations, as you'll see on page 39, and basically the panel have asked for Cabinet's approval of the recommendations as stated, which I think in the main seem to be aimed at the portfolio holder for consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor, I'm going to ask you to move because Councillor Condoka wants to sit there now.
I can sit somewhere else.
Councillor Condoka.
Thank you, Chair. This is actually the second review that we had into the assets of the council. We had one last year, and then that established that there was actually lots of assets that needed further work. So we then, as a committee, went into these pavilions, chapels, etc., which wasn't done by the previous year review. And it's most disappointing that we've now had to park the bit on the pavilions because of the playing pitch strategy. The playing pitch strategy is tied in massively with the borough plan and tied in with planning applications. So until we get all this work done, we're not getting decent funding to put things like our pavilions into a decent state of repair, to actually know what they've got and to actually plan for the future. We face 2,000 extra houses in Wellington St Nicholas already. The borough plan's trying to put 4,500 into the north of New England Bedworth. And so we urgently actually need to get this playing pitch strategy done. We need to look at our assets and make sure we're getting money into maintaining things like the Sandon Park pavilion. At the moment, it seems that the grant-funded applications and assistance to the Bedworth Cricket Club and the Bedworth Football Club is all going ahead, but in Wellington we're losing out on funding because we haven't progressed this work on the playing pitch strategy. There is an urgent need to do this. We have masses of assets. We're losing value of those assets as they deteriorate, as you can see with the chapels. And this is money we're just chucking away by not having a decent understanding of what we've got, what work needs doing to it, and how much we can ask developers to pay to help improve the standards of our facilities. And we are losing young population. People are actually leaving places like Wellington, St Nick's and loads of other wards in the New England Bedworth to places with better facilities for people to play sports, etc. Unless you're lucky enough to be close to some of the Bedworth facilities that are getting a big makeover, we are chucking money away by not having a decent view of our playing pitch strategies, done timely, and getting money from developers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions to Councillor Condoka? No, thank you very much. Well, obviously this isn't to be presented because it's come from an OSP, But I would say at the end of the day, in all of these wish lists, because I could come up with a massive wish list of things I would love to be done to create paradise on earth in Nuneaton and Bedworth. We have lost 53% of our government grant in 6 years, and we have struggled to maintain the services we've got and the buildings that we've got. In fact, we've got rid of 2 to all move staff into this building to be able to save money. So we all have to be realistic, but obviously we do want to assist community groups if and when we can. Councillor Lloyd?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. Firstly, on some of the last points that was just mentioned by Councillor Kondaka, where he talks about some people getting more money than him because it all being spent basically the Bedworth end. I've said it to him before, I'll say it again, you know, you can't have everything your own way. You know, the people, Councillor Kondaka, that basically got off their seats and gone out there and got the money are the residents and the organisers of those facilities that you very much talk about. Now, and the local councillors of those areas. Now, all I can say to you, Councillor Kondaka, as I've said before, you know, housing does play a part in it, and the funding coming from that housing into those areas does play a part in it. And you talk about Sandringham Pavilion, that can play a part. Funding can come from those housing developments. The second thing is, you say you're losing out. Well, you're losing out basically because you're not doing your job. And the people in those areas are doing the job.
Sorry, I don't think this is time to talk about me and run me down about me having a right to reply. We have this continuously that I'm not doing my job. We're not getting the opportunity to get Section 106 money into Wellington.
Councillor Kondaka,
And
could I ask
if
you not to shout? Nobody interrupted you when you were speaking and criticising other people.
I didn't criticise the portfolio holder. If he's going to criticise me, I want the right to reply.
Councillor Kondaka, I've asked you not to shout during this meeting. Nobody interrupted you when you were speaking and criticising other people. I would ask you to do the same. Thank you.
There's a big difference between personal criticism.
Right. Councillor Lloyd, would you have anything to move on this?
Yes, I do. Like I say, Chair, it's thrown me a little bit. I've got there's a lot of other stuff in there, some really good stuff in here, no doubt about it. There's been a lot of good work done by the councillors that sit on this working party, and I'm just going to move, Chair, because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. That's what this meeting's about. Recommendations within the report from the Economic and Corporate OSB be dealt with by incorporating them as appropriate into the new capital and asset management strategy and associated asset management action plan for the period of 2016-19. And as again I'll say, I commend the people that were on this working party, and yes, they've worked very hard to put this document together. And hopefully we can all be very polite to each other and not knock each other.
Is that seconded?
Second.
Any other members? All those in favour of that recommendation then? Thank you very much. We have got any other items. I'm going to move this around. I haven't got any other items.
No.
So,
no.
Urgent report is land of use of land, Oaston Road, Nuneaton. Who does it come under portfolio holder yourself? Right. You introduce the report.
Yeah, no problem. Chair, I brought this report for a number of reasons. I'll take you through the report. The background is in 3.1. We all know the background. Oaston Range, Oaston Road. It's a former type property that was put forward for being demolished. At planning committee, I think it was 6 houses at the time. It's now 5 with what we're saying now. 6 homes on the site, 5 for outright sale and 1 for the open market and 1 for an absale. That application went in and was refused, deferred or refused at that stage. They do need to put another application in, so we had to come to a decision. I've got a meeting with the Undertakers Guild on the 8th. So I asked officers to go and have another look at the whole of the cemetery, every piece of land that was incorporated within that cemetery. They did, I did, and then Councillor Harvey's been and had a look, and we found out that there was areas of the cemetery we could put more graves or interments into. So I asked them to go away and do a report in preparation for that meeting. But because a decision needed to be made, one way or t'other on this, in public interest, because we have had a number of members of the public have contacted me over concerns for the use on this site, and capping that with the amount of graves that are left within the Nuneaton area for the future, I decided that we needed a report to come to this committee. There's 2 options on the report. Option 1 is the cemetery extension. As I said, there's a lack of identified land within the Nuneaton. We only have the Oaston Road cemetery that we can extend. The future of the land is allocated obviously with the cemetery lodge. As part of these considerations for the future, on the lodge site and the other land either currently unused or unutilised for different purposes, you can see in the ashed areas and the areas of Appendix A, we have areas that can be used within the cartilage of the cemetery, and then there's additional feasibility to remove a pathway for the Muslim provision over on one side. I have had talks with the Muslim community. Officers have been in there and spoke with them, so I'm quite confident that that can be done. We're quite happy that it fits into their existing provision there. The utilisation of this site and everything around it would create 269 full burial plots, which will give us a further 7 to 8 years, and 613 cremated remains plots, which will give us a further 14 years, which will give us, and then there's obviously the Muslim burial area of 80 plots, which will give us another 7 to 8 years supply. This option would give us some breathing space to look for alternative land within the Nuneaton area, once obviously the local plan is completed. Option 2 is reference the existing lodge, and basically is around putting in another application for dwellings on that site. The one thing we can do, if we don't go with this option, is we could turn around and lift the plans for those particular properties, and we could place them in anyone or any part of the borough where we have land available. So it's not something that will die a death. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. It's not something that will be put aside or forgotten about. It is something we can lift and put into another area. For obvious reasons, and because of the need of cemetery land within the Nuneaton area, I will be recommending that we go with option 1, and that is the cemetery extension, and obviously putting by some of the fears of people, there's going to be absolutely, we're going to run out of land within the Nuneaton area. On top of that, we still have Marston Lane in Bedworth that is being well used by Nuneaton and Bedworth people. So we've still got plenty of provision there, and with the proposed extension to that site as well, there'll be absolutely no reason why we should run out of land for burial within the Nuneaton and Bedworth area. So that land is still available, and we will still continue testing it. So my recommendation, Chair, is option 1, that we drop the option 2, putting in for housing development on that piece of land, and we go for the cemetery provision.
Thank you. I'm not going to ask if that's seconded for a minute, because we've got speakers on this. So, Councillor Condocker.
Thank you very much, Chair. Whilst it's actually very good news that we're having a stopgap solution for our cemeteries, I always do fear that we don't actually make progress. The Borough Planner said it's been going for ages, almost a decade now, and this cemetery problem has been going for decades as well, by the sounds of it. So I do hope we actually work hard to actually find more cemetery space after the option 1 is agreed. I'm very disappointed that this paper was emailed out at 5:09 this evening. I think the council should be involving opposition groups, keeping them informed when it does decisions. Decisions which we may agree with, but just the principle is things shouldn't be bounced on us 51 minutes before a meeting if we're lucky enough to read our emails. It's marked not for calling. Yeah, I don't know whether we'd want to call it anyway. But the point is, we need to do democracy properly. We need to involve opposition groups, and I would have hoped it would have been a courtesy to tell opposition groups what was going on, and maybe invite the vice chair of the appropriate scrutiny panel in to walk around the cemeteries. So we do this as a council. I think it's important to do things as a council. The Labour group has a massive majority, so you can force through whatever ideas you want, but it works better if we discuss things and actually run a council very much like other councils do, where opposition groups get the courtesy of being told what's going on, good or bad. So this looks promising. I'm sure the residents locally will be pleased that we're actually not developing 5 houses in such a tight space, and actually work positively. I hate being negative, but unfortunately we're a council that puts things through at the last minute and doesn't involve us. Negative seems to be the only way I work, and I am very different to the county council because we get told well in advance. I don't know if the ward members for St Nicholas have been told about this paper coming to the council tonight. It would have been a good courtesy to do that, so the 2 members for St Nicholas could have turned up and expressed their views. But no, 51 minutes before the report is due, we get an email. So it's not good enough. We actually want proper forward sight. On the housing issue, I'm glad we're not developing the 5 houses on this site. We have new population data out today which cuts the population forecast for the borough by 4,000. We're going to have 4,000 less people in 2031 because of the dire state of the economy in the local borough, the loss of young people. Yeah, we don't need 10,000 houses. It looks like 4,000 to 6,000 is what we're going to look for. So yeah, we don't desperately need these 5 houses. What we do need is more affordable rented houses. So yeah, we do need to actually get that part of the council working. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions to Councillor Condarco? Not comments.
Yes, I should ask one question.
If it's only to what he's actually said.
Yes, it is exactly what he said. Where did you get information on the houses?
From the office.
The numbers,
Yeah.
4,000 to whatever it was.
Yeah.
Where did you get that evidence?
Yeah, this morning, the Office of National Statistics released its 2014 based projections for the population of May NBBC going forward to 2039. It releases this information every 2 years on the Office of National Statistics website. It also releases population estimates, usually in June. So the information is a nice chart, nice spreadsheet, tells you how many people are in the borough.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Condarco.
Well, I don't think I need to speak actually, because I only said I'd speak because I hadn't actually read the report, so I didn't know whether there was something I was going to want to say or not, so I'll stand back on that.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to declare an interest, which I think is ludicrous, because I'm chair of NABCEL, but I'm only the chair of NABCEL, because I'm the leader of the council, and Councillor
I declare the same
Jackson has to do the same thing.
Not as chair of NABCEL, but as a member of NABCEL.
You're the vice chair, aren't you? But we've looked at this problem as councillors, as members of the Cabinet. We have, as Councillor Lloyd said, been to the cemetery, but of course every councillor is entitled to go to the cemetery and have a look. Every member of the public's entitled to go to the cemetery. Any cemetery we've got, they're open, they're open most days, all day, and everybody can go and have a look round. If they can be bothered, actually look at the problem for themselves. This is a situation that has partly come about because of new land being identified, and partly because of the problems with this particular house, leaving aside the planning on the other houses. It would seem that we can answer some genuine concern of the community as far as we can. We're doing the best we can, and that's the top and the bottom of it, really. And basically, I make no apologies for this report coming urgently. It's a problem that we need to solve ASAP. There have been discussions ad infinitum, and until the borough plan is actually finished and dealt with, lots of people will not actually offer land for cemeteries because they can think they can get more for it for houses. And until we show them that that cannot be the case eventually, then that's going to continue for a little while longer. And so this situation is important to deal with now, and that's what we've come back with a solution that we think answers the public concern. Although I have to say many people were happy with the situation we'd already dealt with, and that was the case at the biggest attended meeting on cemeteries when we had a lot of people from Attleborough area there. They agreed with us on the policy of the way forward, but we've hopefully tried to come up with a compromise and suit as many people as possible. So I'll second the proposal put forward by Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Arlington?
Oh, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was just going to say, I think this is an eminently sensible report that's come before us here. I actually applaud Councillor Lloyd for bringing this so timely, despite being accused of withholding this yet again. This has come very, very quickly in front of this Cabinet, and actually it shows that we have listened to concerns of residents. Again, despite being compared to running a regime like North Korea, and despite actually being compared to people like Chemical Alley in Iraq, I actually think that we have listened to our residents here, and a significant portion of the residents, and are actually doing quite a lot to alleviate this issue. So can I thank Councillor Lloyd for bringing this report so timely, and hopefully his discussions with the funeral directors will go very well.
And I was just saying, Chair, one of the reasons is that previously, Chair, was, you know, at the end of the day, we've had a little thing called an election while we've been looking at this. And obviously the first thing, I've got Purdah to deal with. If I'd have brought this during the election, which I couldn't, I'd have been criticised by everybody. So we had officers looking at it over the latter part of the election period. As soon as I knew where we stood on where I stood on the election, obviously, and stood with positions, etc., I moved on it, and I moved as fast and as timely as I can, as been said. Now, I feel sorry. You know, I'm sorry if it offended anybody because they didn't get the report, but the report generally wasn't finished until around about 4 o'clock tonight. And then I had to have a look at it. That's why it was emailed out. You know, I think it's an important issue, and you know, we needed to deal with it. We needed to act speedily, and that's what we have done. If I'm criticised for that, well, I'll take it on the nose. I'm not bothered.
All those in favour of the recommendations? Thank you very much. Are there any other?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Well, can I thank the members and the members of staff and the public who have attended this evening. Declare the meeting closed.
Thank you, Chair.